Hey guys, I want to welcome you to a very special crossover episode between myself and Mikkel and our new friends, Massimo and Sean from the Angry Designer podcast. It was so great meeting these guys. Met them a few years ago at the Into the Woods conference that Lincoln Designs puts on. And then more recently at the Creative South conference in Columbus, Georgia. These guys are fantastic. And I thought it was so cool that it was neat to meet someone else that's running a design podcast. And we thought, why not get together, talk a little shop, talk a little bit about the creative industry in general, and just have a great time chatting and getting to know each other. So I hope you enjoy this. This is a fun episode. We really enjoyed talking to them. I hope you guys enjoy it.
No, it's really great. It's really great. I like your t-shirt.
Maybe, right?
I saw that.
This was at a little like a farmer's market, and this one dude was just selling really cool graphic tees, and I was like, "Are you a graphic designer?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I make this." I was like, "Oh, dude." The minute I put this on Instagram, I got like 20 people asking me about like where it was from.
Awesome.
You know, and same with you guys. You guys they do some great merch, Mikkel. They had.
I appreciate
really
that you
cool
said
stuff.
that. I was, at Creative South, we were testing that merch, and it seemed like it was so different across the board.
I
right?
know,
Like,
right?
it's just because they're all just kind of fun t-shirts.
We've spoken with some individuals that make the time and effort to put together some really kick-ass merch, and it's so admirable. I mean,
Yeah.
I know.
and then it makes you wish after you speak with those individuals that you yourself made more time to put together that,
Mikkel, okay, so picture this, right? We're in the middle of artists everywhere at Creative South, and here we've got like these 3 or 4 dinky t-shirts that are so, to us, they're like, wow, these are great. And then you go see what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And I was just,
Comparisons
oh God,
are
what
a
do we do?
bitch.
It's the worst thing I could have done is looked at
Shoot.
just gone for a walk, right?
Dang.
On a good note. On a good
up
note.
until that point, you're all proud, and then you're
Yeah.
shut down.
Look at my simple, like grade 4
Hey,
level t-shirt.
Hey, it's
Thanks.
okay. It's okay. That's
Where else are designers so head to head? Like it's always at those conferences.
That's true.
And that's why I don't even play in that game. Like I might have a sticker that I have in my backpack that I'm like, hey, I'll hand it out to you, but I'm not putting it on display anywhere.
So true.
Yeah.
But everybody was so cool at that show, right? Because because you're right. Like, I mean, we talked about this before, like 20 years ago when we started in this industry, it was so competitive. And, you would be there and you would just feel daggers on you the whole time you're there, and everybody's competing for everybody's attention. This show,
Not anymore.
Everybody was just so fantastic. Telling,
that's
encouraging. It was amazing. I'm telling you, they were sharing their secrets, talking about designs,
Excellent.
and giving, like, it's such a nice vibe now. This is a very different world.
A little more humility, a little more genuine,
Transparency.
Transparent about the inner workings. It's true. A good decade ago, everybody was don't tell.
Yes.
And it's a little messed up.
It absolutely is.
What do you guys think changed that? I think, there's so many different levels, but what do you think made that everybody just happy to share?
Yeah, that's a really good. Okay, social media for sure.
Yeah.
Right. I think because half of 2/3 of social media is sharing what you've done.
Totally.
Right? And then for a little while, it was just haters everywhere. Right. And everybody had to get that thick skin, and then they had to start learning how to actually, navigate this new thing called, social media. But then I think once everybody figured it out and they learned how to just tune out the haters, it's just everybody's putting their stuff out, and it's just
interesting.
More
community based, less look at me, more givers gain.
Yes.
Approach.
Absolutely. Givers gain.
That's so refreshing because
we're siloed, and if you, where else are we going to learn it? I think also you're right with social media and people trying to one up each other and gain followers. They didn't realize that they were giving away trade secrets. Like
absolutely,
because there's nothing else to talk about.
It's true,
right? Sure,
it's absolutely true. And again, I used to. So when I started, Zen Factor 23 years ago, I was that guy. I was so, blinded by what the world was really like that I would just call up agency owners and be like, hey, you want to go for lunch? Hey, you want to go? And,
that's awesome.
I just,
at the time, you didn't know you were like so ballsy.
So naive. Yes, apparently I was.
You were a trailblazer.
And I couldn't figure out why nobody would ever want to connect. And when they would, the conversations were so weird. Ooh. And I look back now and it's like, what a weird, like,
hindsight.
Just because you divulge who your customer is, it doesn't mean automatically, I'm going to go scoop them, because there's a lot more to it. But that was the mentality.
You should have
back
recorded
then.
those.
But at that time, that was more appropriate and welcomed, whereas you're just a number now and you try to reach somebody over LinkedIn and you may or may not hear back. It was far more successful cold calling and knocking and therefore welcoming back then.
Yes.
That's so true.
So with that being said, then how okay, because I couldn't imagine, looking for a job now.
Me neither.
Right? I couldn't imagine. And I know what we always have people asking for advice and this and that. And I mean, we just give the advice that we know, like, this is what we look forward in portfolios and what we hope to see in interviews. But the process now is what, networking? Is it Indeed? Is it LinkedIn? Do people actually go to these sites?
I mean, I think so. And now there are those that are all bullshit. And those that are true and real. So you hear about Indeed and LinkedIn. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers, guys.
That's the way to go. That's the way to go.
You being 3 hours ahead is ruining us right now.
That's pretty sweet. Well, and not that it matters. I tell Nick all the time that I have those tumblers. Nobody knows what the fuck is in my...
This is my special water.
I tell people, it's soup.
It's matcha. It's matcha.
Matcha. Yeah, there you go. Special matcha. I just actually dropped off my kids at school a little bit later. I had them sleep in because Friday, what the hell. Yeah. And on my way home, I was listening to a little bit of sports radio because I'm done listening to the news these days.
Of course.
And they were doing this Tito's morning talk of the week.
Oh, nice.
And for them, they're Pacific time as well. So it's of course, 5:00 somewhere, but they were like getting a little tipsy in the morning here. And I'm like, that's the way to do it, people.
That is it. We've had our best conversations when we've just even cracked open a beer.
They take
at
flight.
Our 4:00 kind of, calls and stuff, you know?
So true. It's so true.
I think going back to what you said about looking for a job.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about. We've talked to so many people and we've seen it too. There's so many folks, particularly in LA, it just seems to be rampant. The layoffs and the closures.
And how hard.
And you've got someone who's 5 years in competing with someone that's 1 year out of school and all this craziness. I think you're right. I think what I'm seeing is those connections, you getting a referral from someone that they know. It just happened like 10 minutes ago. A good friend posted, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Heyo, Peter so he posted something. And I was like, dude, great insight about all the job people that wrote to them saying for an application, for applying for a job. And what was great about it was one of my students who is perfect for that role saw it and said like, hey, I'm going to apply for there. And I said, put me down as a referral. Like,
nice.
Imagine that connection of like, if you were hiring someone and someone in your
circle says.
Fascinating
is both of you had your eyes on that.
Yeah.
In the global world of all of
how
the
big and broad that is.
What are the chances that your eyes would be on the same, unless you told this individual to keep your eyes peeled?
No, he's doing it all himself. Unfortunately, he got laid off from his first job out of school, and he had a great, he's in UX UI, loves product design. And again, he's just scouting. And the beauty of LinkedIn is I like something or whatever, and now it's going to be on his wall. And that connection is there to that person who could be his possible, employer. So Peter, hire Matthew. If you're
that referral though is worth, it's worth
everything.
It is. I mean,
it's huge.
I don't know if in-house goes through the same nightmares, but when we have to interview, it's a horrible experience. And I remember,
taxing.
So we've hired 2 people in the past 6 weeks. And the first one, actually, it was about 8 weeks now. The first one, we had to vet through 200 applications just to kind of narrow down a first list, right?
Wow.
Then first person that we interviewed of, the 3 that we set up for the first week checked all the boxes. And I was just like, do you guys really want to interview anybody at this point? Like, should we even go through this process?
Yeah.
So we all agree. We're like, no, that's exactly who we want. Just, offer him the job right away. So, 2 days later, it was like, hey, come back in. Let's have a conversation. Weirdest experience. Interviewed the second person, same thing, over 200 applications. And then again, we had to sift through it. And this time we tried to interview 3. First one, on a good note, she was a ringer. She was amazing. But we're like,
it's always the first black dress.
Let's do it right. Yeah. And then the other 2 was so I wonder if it's like, if people realize that it's just as painful of a process on this side.
On your end.
We just want to meet that. So, a referral, right? Which unfortunately got landed us in trouble in the past, but it's like, it backfired. I think they were just trying to unload somebody. And they
it's
great, hire him.
That happens. You're
it
right.
Does. That's not cool.
But I have learned, unless it is like someone I would hire, like honestly, I'd rather be quiet than make the full recommendation, right?
Agreed.
Yeah,
exactly interesting.
That's crazy.
Playing the cards right with that as well.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, please.
Sorry. How many are on your team at this time?
At this moment, we're 14.
14.
That's
absolutely
14.
Cool.
Yeah. So 3 are full-time programmers, developers. They're that side. And then I think we've got like we've got 2 admin office and the rest are designers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you all scattered? Are you all together?
So only the programmers, believe it or not. The programmers are scattered, right? And they're both in the US, one in Florida, one in Delaware. Delaware.
Okay. Yeah.
And the rest of us, believe it or not, are here on site. So
okay, wonderful.
It is fun. We tried doing creative remotely. I mean, through necessity during COVID, right? We tried.
We do have one designer.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Good point. She's right. We do have a production guy in the Philippines who helps out with a lot of things.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
Good.
But I mean, regardless, when COVID hit, everybody was so, happy to try this working from home thing. And so we all scattered and we all worked from home and it was fun for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it was torture.
Yeah. You lost the remaining all the momentum, and meetings for meetings, right? It was crazy.
Oh, it was brutal. So I think after 2 months. So I mean, I don't know how it was down there, but up in Canada, the whole world was shut down. You weren't allowed to even look at somebody else without having the police.
We heard.
It was ridiculous. Yeah, it's stupid.
I thought LA did it bad.
No, Canada really did it bad.
But isn't it funny thinking back about how worried and
I know
end of life, end of world approach we all were about this, like the movies. It's so ridiculous now looking back at all of these regulations that were put in place.
I can't believe we went through it. I really without like a revolt. Like honestly, I really can't.
Yeah.
It seems so
that's
strange.
still to come. I bet you that's still to come.
Oh boy,
we'll see.
Yeah.
Great.
I want to ask you guys real quick because what was the origin of your podcast, and then I'll let Mikkel talk a little bit about the birth of ours. But where did yours start from?
It really started, if anything, selfishly, because it was during COVID. And it was just, we were all so, everybody was working remotely, right? Everybody was, and I always, being Italian, Nick, right? I'm always fired and charged up about something or another. And there was so much about being a designer out by yourself that it was pissing me off. And I was like, Sean, we got to do this because there's so many things that, everybody's working remotely. Everybody is feeling this pain right now. And let's just talk about the stuff that pisses us off about the industry, right? And there is a lot of stuff to bitch
Hence
about.
The word angry. Got it.
Angry, right? And now the anger is more passion because I love it. I mean, we're lifelong designers. That's all we've ever wanted to do. But it started out just kind of calling bullshit, and it is still a big part of what we do. But that's where the intent was, just to kind of let people know that they're not alone. There's other people who are going through the same stuff. And it was, we don't talk, although I can talk all day about logos and fonts, and we love getting into those topics. We also talk about a lot of the things like the struggles of, toxic work environments and, burnout and everything else that goes along with it. So, it worked. I mean, we're not for everybody, but I mean, for the ones that
same. I agree.
That's
it's nice to have a balance. I mean, I love the quality of life while you're working from home as a designer or working the grind or partnering and collaborating with all these different types of creative projects. There's always something to bitch about at the end of the day. We do have our own bitch fest, which keeps it real, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Relatability is huge, but you can only talk shop for so many episodes ongoing. So it's good to have that nuance of, okay, let's bring it home. This was really effed up when this client blah, 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 or this presentation really blew.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
That's been our best episodes. I think the ones that when you show the mistakes and you show the hurdles and everyone chimes in on those more than anything, right? Like I assume you guys see the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, I think people appreciate the same things, right? A podcast isn't necessarily, we can talk about design, but it's not very conducive of, because people want to see when you talk about design, you want to, visually see the logo.
We have struggled with that. Yes.
Right. And I mean, and we've tried, but it just, like doing logo reviews on podcasts didn't seem to really resonate very well.
Yeah, they're tough. They can be tough.
You need the video component now too, right?
You do. Exactly, and we only recently transitioned to this format. So it makes sense. Although it's a little bit harder to do remotely, but it works. People, we're not alone. We know that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And don't you think that the birth from the pandemic is how a lot of these podcasts shows came into place anyway? Remember when they just all of a sudden exploded and it was like,
right?
Everyone's at home and buying webcams and microphones.
Oh, wait, you guys were even prior to this, yes?
Oh my gosh. Well, we're over, is it 13 years, Mikkel?
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
2011.
Trailblazers.
Yeah, so Mikkel and Wes, who we just brought back on for a fun guest episode a couple weeks ago.
Right.
They started it back in the day, and I was a listener.
Wow.
And literally chimed in and was like, guys, I hear you're down a co-host. And so
good for you.
But
Nick.
it changed everything for me. It made me get through the whole transition of moving out of my long-time job and starting my own thing, because I was listening to these guys talk about their shop, and I was like, one, there are individuals doing this, and two, they're talking about it. What start? Where did the start come from? Because I remember you guys telling this a long time ago, Mikkel. Where did the DGDC start?
I was just going to share that it's almost. I mean, I know that there are stories that are completely opposite of this, but it keeps it safe in its origin to not have a friendship foundation prior to initiating a show, and that's how this came into place. It's almost best that Nick and I did not know one another prior to him sharing his interest to come on to see how it could work.
Yeah.
Now I'm female and they wanted a female voice. So that's just kind of lucky for me. But
well, I think you lend a little bit more than just, your
I don't mean to minimize my role here. But it's true that Wes, he is this guy that I hadn't known either. And he had reached out to a placement agency in the Seattle area. And this gal called me and said, I know a guy, he's looking for a co-host. What do you think? And I'm like, I never close the door on anything. You never know. Keep the windows open. Possibilities come your way. Life is just fabulous in that, or in that regard. So he and I met on this like blind date, so to speak. Just like, let's see how we jive. Well, he's like my Will, and I'm like his Grace from the beginning, because he's like this. He's like this flamer from Hollywood area, and I couldn't get enough of him. I needed to have him in my life.
Can you say stuff like that?
Yes. It's back. Comedy's back, by the way.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I was so relieved and therefore intimidated. I was like, I can't, I got to turn him on in some ways so that he knows that I'm legit, that everything about his lifestyle jives with me. I love this.
Oh, that's the best. You guys had such a good. I loved listening. And I think it was that. You're right.
I
think
feel like a crazy chapter ago. Gosh,
it does.
I mean,
and then we all went to the How Design in Chicago after I'd been on maybe for about a year at the time, and it was so awesome. It was the first time the three of us were together, and then we got to do a few Adobe Maxes after that as well.
Right.
And that really. I think you're right. There was something cool about being kind of design strangers and not like I've done other things with close friends, and yes, there's a great chemistry.
There's a chemistry that,
but there's no discovery. Like you get to talk about things, and like I didn't know the little ins and outs of that story, and it's so great to hear that.
I was going through a breakup in between homes and feeling so insecure, and I thought I'm going to flunk my first episode with them. It's not going to come across organically. It's just going to bomb. Yeah. And when you care that greatly about something, it tends to go well, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was so nervous. Yeah. I don't know about you guys. Probably. I'm curious to ask you that question because I remember the day of that I was joining them to be just a guest first, not even they hadn't told me
God,
like, come on board.
You.
I was walking up and down these stairs going like, what the hell am I doing? I hadn't even begun teaching yet or anything. So I talk about the imposter syndrome. I'm like, who wants to hear my stupid story, right?
It is so important for all of us to go through those little episodes. Yeah. No pun. It's so important.
I agreed. You know what?
It means you care. It means you care.
Exactly. If you're not a little bit nervous, if you're not a little bit, if a little bit, honestly, like, I mean, there's no extra effort that's going to go into something because you don't really care that much.
Yeah.
You know, the ones who don't care, the ones who aren't nervous at all, you kind of question if they're actually authentic or not to this.
Yeah.
I say that to every young designer.
We'll have these times where we'll say, are you feeling nervous? Are you uncomfortable? We want each other to be uncomfortable. Like, do we still have that edge? Am I making you uncomfortable? Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's further this.
Yeah. Those uncomfortable situations are where the best things come out of.
Agreed.
Hands down. Right. Yeah. I always love that. Another question for you guys, and maybe Mikkel, you've probably got a good answer to this too. What's the best advice you ever got from a listener? Maybe it was feedback or some response to something. Do you remember anything unique, guys?
Yeah, do you guys get those DMs that are like, of course, we need to do more of that or something?
Yeah. Well, apparently there's this car talk show out there that people say that they remind us of. Not once, not twice. We've had 20, 30 people really be like, you guys remind me of this car talk show. And when I actually looked it up,
it on NPR?
It's like two grizzly guys. No, I just found old. It used to be like on local cable TV, I guess. I guess enough people saw this, and then it was on YouTube, and it was just two old grizzly guys, and people would call in, right? This old grandma, and she's like, my car this morning was making a noise, and it would click, click, click.
I remember
could it be?
That.
And these guys would then start analyzing the problem. And like, that's what your show reminds us of.
That's so fabulous.
You guys like because I watch every car YouTube thing in the world, and so I'm sitting there going like, I think I remember that one where it's like the call in,
and it's old. It was an old show, so we're like, how are we going to do this? Because we need to almost. But then you have
do you know the name of the two hosts that ran that car show?
Because I'm going to put them on the episode art for this.
I swear it's got to be the one that my roommate used to listen to in Seattle. And there was something comforting and home about listening to it.
It's probably the first those were like the first things of like podcasts in its infancy. When you think about it, cable access stuff, right?
Huh.
I know, it's brilliant, right? I mean, we've got a whole generation now that will never experience horrible local cable TV.
Oh, yes.
They don't know what they're missing.
Maybe you guys aren't too flippin' angry after all, and you need a little bit more grit.
I know. See, they miss. I was waiting to meet these guys, going like, they're gonna be so angry or whatever, and I'm like, couldn't have been the nicest people, nicer in the world.
That's awesome.
We had
it's we're in trouble because we're gonna have a brand identity crisis because all the anger is gone.
Yeah, and it's passionate designer. Passionate designer.
But that doesn't sound as good, doesn't it?
I know.
No, it doesn't.
Kind of porny. Yeah,
you're right.
We don't need that. We don't need that. So, but I mean, anger. And the joke, of course, is everybody used to, being a good old Italian guy, everybody, and I think I even mentioned this to you, Nick. It's just like everybody's always like, well, every time you'd bring a girl home to meet the family, right? When you're growing up, they're like, why is your family always yelling at each other? They're always fighting. And I was like, we're not fighting with each other.
Love.
We're Italian. It's passion. And everybody growing up, it's like, why do you always talk like you're angry? And I'm like, I'm not angry at all.
Heated discussions.
I have a shirt that says, I'm not angry, I'm Italian.
I'm Italian. I got the same one.
Oh, that's awesome. Right on.
And that's ultimately where this came from, is because, again, at the root of everything, people know, like, we care so much about, not just what we went through, but I remember the hell I used to, like, growing up, because I had, back again, when we started, like 20, 23 years ago, the agency, there was nobody to turn to for advice, right? And there was no free information. There was no YouTube. And obviously my attempts at calling people for help didn't really work. So it was just a lot of trial and error. And I mean, although I was a designer 100%, I went to school for design. I learned everything about design, photography, like everything was about design. I never learned practical business knowledge, right? And that was the hardest thing, is learning how to, manage clients, learning how to properly budget, quote things, hiring people. So, I still love the space, but that's where I didn't want people to have to go through the same struggles I did.
Totally.
And so that's where a lot of the information we give away. One thing's for sure, we never give away anything that hasn't happened to us. Our whole show is always based on solely our experiences of running an agency or losing clients or this or that, right or wrong. It's what worked for us. And I mean, 23 years, we're still in business. So something's going right.
Yeah.
But so that's where it always comes from a good place. But man, there's some good rants that happen. Like next week's episode that's launching, it's all about us losing a client. So we lost a client.
Wow.
We actually got fired. We got fired. Usually we're firing customers, but now we got let go. And there's a lot to unpack there. And I never really, we've never talked about that. So this was a perfect opportunity. And I didn't tell him. I wanted that.
Amazing.
Right. And so we just talked about everything, the different levels of, we had fun with it, of course. And then I got a little pissy about it, of course, because, we were unjustly let go. But, regardless, it's something worth talking about.
Did you name names?
To reflect.
No, we didn't name names, but
we have to be careful about that as well.
Right. There's a line that we don't want to cross.
But potential clients are going to find out you've got this and maybe even listen to an episode or two. I'm assuming I've heard, so you're right.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with Lincoln at Creative South talked about a client that they had to fire at a certain point.
They did name names.
And they named names and they showed all the artwork, Mikkel. Like that was so bold for a young designer to be in the audience and see someone that they look up to. It's like, I even told Dan afterwards, I'm like, one girl said like, that was so stressful watching. I'm like, no, that was actually the best part of the entire show because
humanizing.
Exactly. Even you go through this. Like, I'm like, Lincoln, I think everything they do hits it out of the freaking ballpark.
Dude. Exactly.
So, Michael Jordan did not make the high school. Like, let's be real about all
100%.
this.
Human.
Well, and we talked about that. That's, I think, moving forward, I think that's changed. That's probably going to be the most important element of every job, every designer, every podcast is the authenticity.
Yeah, your life.
And I mean, again, if you don't seem, or if you perceive yourself to be at another level above everything
forget
else,
about it.
Exactly. And brands need to come forth, whether it's skeletons in the closet or, whether their product isn't as good as they actually are pretending that
admitting
it is.
a mistake. I think that's my number one, like, humility thing that has made my whole thing change is like,
agreed.
I go to me first. What did I do that I could have prevented maybe the situation that would be a rant? Rather than rant, I'd rather review it first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the thing.
What about your show? Like something shocking?
Disclosing that stuff though, doesn't it help the bitterness level a little bit? Even to professionally disclose the scenario can be useful in that vein.
Yeah. I call it the marinara. That's like, I'm sure you understand. It boils up to about here. You can see the red line. And so, yes. Holding it down a little bit. Yeah.
And to your point, Mikkel, that's kind of the situation, how we started. Because again, everybody had these experiences, but they didn't know. They felt so siloed, right? Exactly.
And nobody was talking about it.
Yeah, I know. And it's so ridiculous now in hindsight. But, it's just...
Yeah, I compare it to giving birth. Nobody flippin' talked about all of the ups and downs of giving birth. Like, it's so personal. Well, everybody can just relax. There are a lot of women going through this.
Now there's 1,000 podcasts probably about it, taking you through every minute of it,
Yeah.
Yeah, almost too gory, right?
Mikkel, my kids don't even want to have kids anymore after hearing this, okay?
I love it.
Painful. Don't worry about it. Don't forget all about it.
I listened to a podcast the other day, Dad. Never happening.
Yeah, they talked me through it.
You're right. Mikkel, do you remember any good advice that like a listener threw our way?
Yeah. Who does not want to listen to examples, like to sample through project instances whereby shit went south or things went really well and why? So rather than being generic and talking up here, people want to understand what situation and at what point, like getting a little bit granular, in fact, without dropping names is the hard part. But it's doable because I think it makes it a little bit more organic in that sense. People feel like they're in the room. These listeners are like, no shit, that happened to me. And there's something gratifying and and a little bit more humbling about listening, and therefore for us showcasing and disclosing that type of show. So yeah, people, I can't tell you how many times people have from all over have shared, can you do more of that, please?
More of that. I know.
I love the way that's been written. Just do more than that, because when they've heard one little thing, they want to hear more of it. And I think I'm the same way as a listener of anything that I'm a fan of. I had a young designer that I was helping out with their portfolio, and he listened to the podcast and he said, I love that you have these A-listers. Everybody we've had on usually. And then, to be honest though, too, we've had no names. We've had people that we knew were going to be just great and good content. But he had an interesting perspective. He says, coming from my perspective, I want to hear about the person, the next level above me in that mid-tier. And how did they make the shift from like just designer to maybe the first step in management or director or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
And I loved it so much that I challenged him. I said, you come up with an episode and we'll put it on the actual network. And Tom created a whole version of our podcast that he's out now at 6 episodes.
Yes.
And it's called The Next Level. And he interviews those people that are right above him. And he wants to know, how do I get to you?
Yes.
It's just perfect.
It's brilliant. I was shocked to learn this. So just recently, by recently, last week, I sent out a survey to our listeners to be like, okay, we want to change things up. We want to improve this and make this the best for you. Here's a list of questions, right? And just answer them. And one of them was about the type of listeners, right? Because like you said, we've had big names, and we intentionally did, and not because we're above anybody, but because we went through all the hell. So I just want to learn, the people that we look up to and are just like, superstars in the space. They were saying the opposite. They said they wanted more of the average Joe.
There you go.
And I was blown away.
Yeah. But a lot of the names have been everywhere.
Yeah, I would be too.
Some of the names have been on a podcast twice, right? So those stories have maybe been told, and you're right. It's kind of like that next. And hey, I want to meet that person too when we're at a conference or whatever. But if I've heard their story a few times, you're right. There's so many people that have not told their story.
Yeah.
I love that.
I was happy to hear that, actually, because a lot of pressure.
I would be too. Well, sure. That, and don't you think that it's so much easier, surprising to be on the receiving end of these stories going, yeah, bravo for you, love where you've gotten, and all of your glamour.
Exactly.
What about individuals like me in the real world that won't really ever be Johnny Cupcakes? Like, what do you say about individuals like myself? So that brings it home a little bit in a different respect. That's cool.
Absolutely. I think it's really cool. And you know what else is not to toot our own horns, but then if we can talk to somebody and also give them advice live, console them advice, almost help them talk through problems live on a show.
Yeah.
People would love to hear that, because when you're talking to, the Draplins or the Martins of the world, great, cool. But I mean, it's hard for me to teach them anything or give them any sort of advice.
Yeah.
I'm pulling all the information out. But if there's something I can give to somebody and they're like, thanks for talking me through that, I mean, that would bring us up at a whole new level.
Yeah.
Yeah. How impactful.
The best conversations come from impromptu conversations rather than like kind of the scripted thing. And like, hey, I saw that new project you posted. Tell us about it. It's like, doesn't get too granular. But when you discover something new about a person and you're in conversation with them, that's where it really shines to me. I just love those moments, right? All right, let's rant a little bit. What do you we've got our eyes on everything. What do you guys think is the most frustrating trend in design right now?
So you know what's pissing me off right now?
I knew you'd have an answer so quickly.
Let me just put it out there.
As he grabs the Jack Daniels.
As I grab this, right? I needed a little bit of
that timing is brilliant.
I hope you're watching this on video, guys. Please, this is so worth it.
So you want a little bit of this? So, I mean, again, there's a lot of things that piss me off about design. Okay. So let's just, but right now, I think the thing right now that's pissing me off is I am, as you know, and Nick, we've talked about this, I am 100% a fan and a supporter, and I know it's happening, so get used to it. AI, and how it's coming as a really strong tool. Okay,
inevitably,
I'm cool with that. What I hate though is I feel like companies, that are putting it like the Getty's Images and iStock and, unfortunately, even, Adobe Stock and Deposit.
They're all doing it.
They're all putting up, horrible AI, imagery on their stock libraries. So they're getting rid of jobs of professional photographers and putting up. And my issue is, we all know they're fake. You can see that they're AI generated images because they're not there yet.
I don't think you need to have the designer eye to notice that.
No. Exactly.
I think it's ridiculously obvious.
There'll be AI looks that everyone's going to know.
Exactly. And why the hell is everybody okay with this? Like, that's the part I'm not okay with, because it's like intentionally saying, I'm going to put up substandard work, and you all know it's substandard, and you all know it's fake, and it's not a real work, and it's generating AI, and hey, you could probably do it yourself if you were smart enough, but just buy it from me and pay me royalties on.
Right.
Dude, right now, I have an issue with this, right? And again, it's
I turn that into a positive though, because I think that means if you're like us and you still care and you put all that heart and passion into your work, you're not going to use it to that level. And guess what? Your work's going to look that much better. It's just like we talked about it 10 years ago when all the freaking logo tournaments and like Fiverr came around. And I just remember saying to anybody going like, if you're scared of that, you better up your game. Right. Because like, look, those didn't last.
No.
You can still do a build a logo on your Wix thing or on your Squarespace. They still have a little feature, but come on, in the real world, not going to work.
It's not like that.
Not even close.
So I think that you're right. Like I know there's that look, and it's that AI looks happening, and it is. But I have not yet seen it really in the world of I don't want to say award winning, but of good and better design out there.
Yeah,
fair enough. It's only showing up in like crappy social media posts and maybe some local advertisement.
Dude, I've seen some of it though on like, I don't know, maybe we're seeing it differently up here, but like Netflix banners are used.
Oh, really?
And there's been topics. It's been out there. It's people are talking about it, like why are they using that? Now it seems like
a notable brand such as Netflix.
I thought they were all swearing it off, particularly that's where it's wrong. The entertainment business is saying anybody who works for us, you cannot use it. But
you can.
Here they are using it for their promo because they're cutting jobs. That's fun.
Absolutely.
And what's a little bit confusing is that these experts that are having these news segments and speaking to AI as it is now, understanding how it's going to continue to evolve, they're just sharing and indicating, hold on to your seats, it's coming, it's only going to progress from here. Well, why not release until it's at the point that it is magnificent, as opposed to substandard, like you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah, because whatever our deliverable might be in final form is supposed to be and is that
spectacular.
Yeah, it is excellent. It needs to be at excellent phase. So why are these other
why are they letting that happen?
Notions not abiding to those standards.
I think if it leads, it bleeds kind of thing. Everyone's covering it because it's such a hot topic. And the minute I clicked on like one AI like pro on YouTube, now my entire feed, and I didn't realize how many of these people are calling themselves, like AI experts at this moment. It's like you can't be. It's just like it's just like NFTs. It was like if I saw another NFT like guru in week 2 of NFTs, it's like just stop. And look where that went. So as much as I am embracing it and I'm playing with it, I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm like kind of not getting impressed with it anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's going to level out, and we're going to be the true judges of how much we let that into our industry.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think we're all at a weird thing. And we saw that like at Creative South, and everyone I've talked to since then, still, we all have a very it's like the rug's been pulled up and we're all here going like, how do we fall from this weird thing that AI is?
Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, it's not going anywhere.
No.
Like, this we know. And to Mikkel's point, it's only getting better.
Yes.
So, and when we talked a lot about, the funny thing is, so here we're designers, but I mean, the AI tool used most is ChatGPT, right? Which is more strategy, more brainstorming, more help me wordsmith this. The image stuff, we did an episode about, at Christmas time, I helped my daughter create a a book. She needed to do a book for a school project. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do this in AI and see what happens. Well, this was like a 12-page book. It still took me over 20 hours to do.
Oh, really?
Because number one, you had to keep the images consistent. Then my Photoshop had to come in. Then I had to, it's a book. So I needed it to look consistent from front to back. So I had to then, the characters all needed to be Photoshopped. So even though this was technically an AI generated program, it still took me over 20 hours to do. And I wouldn't have had the skills, the Photoshop
So
skills
how come it's not logging and
remembering?
Well, it is now.
It is now.
Consistency.
Yeah. It is now.
You can highlight that character and say, keep this character throughout the next.
Oh, you just said Christmas time. So that's the evolved.
Honestly, Miguel, the funny thing is,
that's so 2023.
It was so 3 months ago.
Come on.
I swear it was the week after it came out. And I'm like, for God's sake.
Oh, isn't this wild?
I was right.
Yeah. No, that would have been 2 hours.
No, but but the truth of the matter, though, is even though it took me 20 hours, if I was to have done it from scratch, traditionally how I would do it, I would have been into that project over 100 hours. And that's the sad truth, right? Because everything would have needed to be illustrated. Every one of those illustrations would have taken me hours to. So in all fairness, there was still advantages there, even though it was grinding to do. But so it's just proof. It's powerful. But I'm not using any image stuff except for what Photoshop has, of course.
Yes.
That's different.
Yeah.
I just consider that
like uncropping an image. You get an image from someone and it's like that, and you're like, I need that background to extend 5 more feet this way.
yeah. That has been a game. Oh my God. Because now it's like my stock photography library has now like quintupled because now I don't have to worry about finding enough of a background so I can crop it and get the composition right.
Yeah, that's a pretty huge. That's a pretty
the generative
huge
part is great on that.
Yeah. You know what? When I think of, we've done trend reports, we've done these in the past, and so I love this question because like one thing I just don't like is trends themselves. Like, and I think social media has been the death of that because it's like we did this on an Adobe thing the other day, and it was like the neo brutalism, it was the glass morphia, all these things that are risen to the top.
Yeah.
But isn't it sucks that it gets labeled that because then it gets so oversaturated.
Right.
And then social only puts that on the top. And now when we go looking for reference, all I'm seeing is that. And so as an answer to it, I think like AI has been a good thing in my brainstorming thing because it will put something together that is completely wacky.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would get those two influences together to create. And then I can take it and be like, okay, now I'm going to create my design. But I get that it's almost like that trend is killing the trends that are like rising to the top.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's absolutely true. It's everywhere. It's not just in the design, but it's the information we're being fed, the information
music,
we're seeing, music,
entertainment, movie. It's like these formulas are just so like, what is no one's like, I always love when Apple says, we're going to tell you what you need, right? We don't, we don't create something until we think it's what you need. And it's, and I love that idea of like, I wish we can be like more like, I wish I can be more like that as a designer. Like, I'm going to give you something you've probably never seen. Like, have you guys heard of the Maya principle? It means most appropriate yet familiar. Something like that. Or yet appropriate. Yet appropriate. Yeah. And so it's that combination of a great design is there's a little bit of like, whoa, what is that? I've never seen it before. And then there's a bit of home nostalgia and trust.
Yeah.
If you can blend those two things.
That's amazing.
Really good.
Isn't that the coolest little
cool. I love that. So, but what is the answer if the world does not attribute a label to the description of these trend nuances that come and go over the course of years? So what is the solution therefore? Because I agree. What you just exemplified and what tends to happen on social media and otherwise, once that trend is given a name and a definition,
it outdates itself.
Then what do people do about
Interesting.
that?
Like, I mean, is it just generalized as good design at that point? I mean, if we look at some classic stuff,
does that become part of the library now?
Right.
Yeah, because the same umbrella, but is that too high level? Do people need to be a little bit?
Well, how would you describe like Paul Rand's work or Massimo Vignelli's work? Right, it's still beautiful. It stands the test of time. I could look at that work every day. You know,
was it new?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, mid-century at the time. I mean, it was.
Did it trend? Did it trend?
You're right, because the 70s, it did trend in the 70s for sure. It did.
So that's an interesting point. I like those examples. They're very distinct.
Or like Bauhaus as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Bauhaus, but you know what? To Mikkel's point, Bauhaus has a name. And sometimes it's hot.
How
Sometimes
do you
it's
avoid
not.
this?
But or Swiss modernism, right?
But it was based on the guy. The guy's name was Bauhaus, so it was
fair,
right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And it did, and it's also But you're right. It stretched into so much more architecture.
Yes.
You know, and everything else too.
For sure. It's got its own style approach altogether.
Maybe the answer is us as gatekeepers. I know this is my biggest battle with a new client. They think they come in with what they want it to be because they've seen it. Like they'll send you that.
Isn't that annoying?
You know that, like, if I see another one of those like animated, you know, the animated character walking with the big shoes, and it's like,
oh my god,
black outline with
keep on trucking.
Yeah, with like colorful. You know, it's like if I see that one more time, I'm gonna go crazy. And if a client brings it to me, I'm gonna even go more crazy. So it's kind of like.
Do we have a website like Apple's?
Yeah, exactly. Same, right? You know, or I want packaging like the iPhone.
But you know, they don't want that,
no.
Right? Because they love everything that, and it's because the brand and the billions of dollars in impressions we have on something like Apple makes us accept that. You give that to a customer and be like, hey, listen, you know what? One close up, and let's not talk about your product. Let's only talk about the single benefit your product does. You know, they're gonna what is it? They're gonna go through foam or FOLO. We call it FOLO. Fear of leaving out.
Fear of leaving out. So
they fear that the one thing that they leave out is
I need to use that. And Maya. I need to use both of them.
Yeah.
So as a consultant, do you find yourself saying that at any given, like kickoff or the technical kick?
I say, why would you? I go, we're going to lead, not follow. Yeah. I always tell them that.
I meant more of what was just like that. As humans, we appreciate that. I'll tell you why.
Right. Yeah.
Do you go deeper than that and say, the reason you think that way, the reason you think you want that.
Just tell them that, you know what? Yes.
Yeah, of course.
That's a consultant. That can be a good approach of a consultant. I was just wondering if it oftentimes is your guys' own. That's very
so
interesting.
The problem is, so we're and you have to understand, you know, this side of the table, right? Like this podcast is very much, you know, Z Factor's brand. And I've been told by some customers that, you know, like never to my face, but they'll say it to somebody else and like, oh, that's just the way he talks. Don't take it personally. And it's because it's just sometimes I'm like, I'll say shit like this.
Yeah.
I'll be like, no, you don't want that. And this is why and sometimes maybe, I'm not going to swear and beat my chest and make them feel like kids. But at the same time, sometimes I can't hold back, and I'm very like to think quasi-professional.
These are all qualities of you. I from what I understand, and from what I'm taking here, and for those that don't maybe really know you in that regard, maybe that's just going to inevitably happen.
Yeah.
But
absolutely right.
But that's got your partner here that can say like, "Don't worry, it's all good."
Yeah, he's always standing behind me like
that's
this.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I'm the closer.
If it works, keep doing it, Sean.
Totally, Nick. I was just gonna say the same.
Right? Yeah. That's the best. I love that. But you also,
or he's behind. Call me.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't called Sean Graphic Design Company. It's on. He's got awesome. He's got a QR code right there.
That's right.
I love it. But don't you think that attitude, Massimo, that you're giving, that is attached to authority? And Mikkel and I have talked about this so many other things. Like, remember when we did that whole thing about you never question what a doctor prescribes you, or right? Yes. So it's kind of like how do we play that role better with the client?
It's true.
And you've got to do that from the very beginning, because if you're wishy-washy and you let them run with something,
and don't you think people can tell? People can tell.
Well, you think, but once you lose that expert status, you might as well throw in the towel, because then they're not going to want to pay your rates.
Absolutely, well said.
It's true.
Yeah. And why is it costing me this amount? Exactly. All that other stuff, right?
And then they'll question everything, just like you said. You don't want that. Once you start down that road, that project is done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why would you even want to pay for professionalism if you're feeling questionable about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, the physician thing is such a good go-to for a comparison and an analogy altogether, Nick.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah,
we're saving lives, but we're saving your brand. Do you know what I mean? Like
the next Angry Designers t-shirt right there.
Good point. Good point.
Brand doctor.
I know.
No doubt.
It's true.
Yeah.
I know we've got about 15 more minutes here, but I want to talk a little bit about, I'm sure you guys have a lot of younger
This was fun.
designers.
I know. This has been so enjoyable.
Right? Yeah, we're going to have to do another one of these.
And we need to be the ones drinking.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll do it
Exactly.
later.
Yeah.
For any of those like fresh-faced designers out there, what's your most like non-BS advice on creating that killer portfolio? Getting something that will stand out. There's a sea of, just the same old stuff, particularly in young designers. What do you guys all think?
You know what? Physicians aside, isn't the best therapist one that's been through the shit themselves? So
Yeah.
I have made a portfolio in my first starting phase that was like too frivolous. I was preparing all these like granular elements on the side of my homepage to make it look, well, if your portfolio can speak for itself, you don't need all that shit.
You're right.
You just
You're right.
need
You're right.
less is
Totally.
more. Just
Less is more.
showcase your shit. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. If I'm going to add a little more to that, Mikkel,
Yeah.
because again, we're a niche agency, right? Z Factor is, and that's fine. We tell everybody that right from the start. This is our focus.
Yeah,
and
great.
so if somebody comes in, our niche is B2B technology companies.
Okay.
So if somebody comes in with a fashion portfolio,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. You're
totally
wrong.
doesn't work for us, right?
Read
I'm just
the
like,
room.
Do you say
it's
that?
just
Do you say that at the very?
Yes. And we let them know, if you've done your homework, right, come prepared. And we
Beggars
tell
can't be
everybody,
choosers,
come as
man.
you are, right? So the one piece of advice I will let everybody know, because everybody comes different stages of their portfolio, right? But don't be scared to like some people think that your portfolio is sacred and it can't change, right? Where the reality is you need to be able to tailor it based on the job that you're going for or you're looking for. So if somebody's coming here and they know that we're into tech and even B2B, well, I mean, showing me fashion stuff and local retail ice creameries isn't going to help you.
Sure.
But if you were to show me something half as sexy, right, but it fits my market and you're able to talk me through your thought process of why you're showing me something that is in my space, because again, the portfolio is just what gets us into the room. Right? It's everything else above the portfolio that's going to land them that job
and keep it. And keep it.
Exactly. So try as hard as you just because it's a portfolio, like tailor it if you can about that, and rightfully so, because they should research the company that they're going to an interview
100%.
Right. And then with that being said, no, if they're huge in the, pharma industry, well, then only show them things that kind of, hint to that. Right. Because really it's there's so much more. So that would be the big advice that I think that a lot of people are too scared to do.
Yeah.
I think you're right too, Mikkel, with the details always seem like extra because there's no confidence in the real work. Like
so true.
If the real work
and in hindsight, that's
can
absolutely
shine.
what that was all about.
Yeah.
You're
like
right.
I have students so concerned about their self-branded logo on the top. I'm like, least of your worries.
Right.
Let's talk about your work.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want your name set in a beautiful Poppins font on the top. And
however, isn't that understandable? Because
we get it.
We're all looking at and marveling at these beautiful logos
of course.
that in their simplicity.
Yep.
And if you don't have your own, it makes you feel like whether you're unworthy.
Personal branding is huge right from day one.
It's so difficult. It's so difficult.
But a young person might not have the talent just yet unless they can do, if they got some hand lettering skills or some really good typography skills, they can nail it, right? And then it doesn't look student, but there's a big risk that it's going to look student because they put their CT together and it's this beautiful little way.
Yeah, you're right.
That shouts student to a professional immediately. And so like I will tell them like, just type it in something beautiful. Let's talk about your work and that first impression that you make. Cause like, like 10 seconds in, if this person's the right one or not. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like you said,
dude,
the right work. Have you done their homework on them as well? But even I would say, let's say someone shows you all the things they've done their homework, but at the very end they go, plus I'm also an avid photographer and blah, blah. Then you're like, I get 2 and 1.
Yes. Yes. Why? Because that's been so frowned upon. So I'm on Reddit a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And Reddit, I've learned that Reddit people it's a forum for people to complain more than anything.
Sure.
It seems like it.
Yeah.
And so many people complain about, well, I was hired as a graphic designer, but now they're asking me to do some copy and they want me to take pictures. I was only hired as a
Sorry.
Why are people so scared to make themselves indispensable? Right?
Yeah,
Take it all. Exactly.
I call it be undeniable. Like
opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved it when someone gave me that opportunity. They're like, "Hey, we have these products and they all need to be shot. We have everything. Can you do it?" I'm like, "I'll figure it out."
Yeah, exactly.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, I love
what were you going to say, Mikkel?
Oh, I was just going to say, be the yes man. What?
Totally.
If you have to research under the gun, then research under the gun.
Right. Wow. So is this something that, Nick, is this something that you must be telling this to your students?
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
All the time.
Okay. Because it seems like, the ones that we interview here from, and I've talked to you about my issues with education. On a good note, you have changed my perception. So again, and even your last week's post, about the restaurant with the students, man, good for you. I love this.
Thank you
for what he's doing there. You're changing my look. But I mean, again, from what we're seeing here, they're not getting that fire. They're like, they don't want to be yes men. They don't want to be any more than what they're going to school for. And
there's an entitlement that someone's giving them. And it's like, no, guys, and we're not asking you to compromise. We're actually asking you to broaden. And we're also telling you that is going to be undeniably your success in the future.
Absolutely.
Because no one wants the oversensitive creative. No one wants the creative that doesn't compromise or doesn't bend. And don't think we're not giving you negative stuff here. This is all positive stuff. Yes. Don't you agree? I
agree.
I wonder where that's coming from, because I think it's everything on demand and everything being so
fortunate if they ask, can you accomplish this for us? Because maybe that's a gift question for you right there. Because if you didn't give off signals that you can accomplish anything in that arena, then that's probably your fault.
Yes.
Because give them the impression that you're up for
whatever the challenge.
The challenge.
Well, but so I'm careful using that word challenge, because I want them to believe in me from the very start. So I might phrase it a little bit differently.
That's what they're buying, though, right? Like if you show me that you are the kind of person, Mikkel, that you will take on anything, if you think you can do it and help out the bigger in the agency, the business, right? You're the person that I want on my team, because I don't have the time to research everything. But you're saying, I'll do it. Let me figure it out for you. No?
Yeah. You know what? I'm admitting that I don't want the other end to feel reluctance by any means. So I admit that I curtail and might spin a little white lie in there at the start to make them feel like they're not giving me a creative challenge. I have experience with that.
Are you saying you fake it?
I might at the start. I might at the start, and then
but you'll learn.
Pull all-nighters to get it and learn the material. That's the opportunity. Otherwise, if I hadn't been provided that, I wouldn't have come to that phase and learned that I love it and wanted to further it, and then that becomes my niche. I mean, I don't know.
Exactly. No, you're right. I have this thing that we always joke about, and it's like a customer will ask me if I know how to do something on Friday, right? And my response is, I'm sure I can. Let me just finalize. And by Monday, I will be an expert on that. Whatever it is they ask, I will be that weekend. And to your point, it's true, right?
Yeah.
So we know,
I know
what we're capable. We have an internal confidence, and it's this curiosity that takes us further. And it's just we need this, right? It's that whole foolish.
How do you push that down to someone who hasn't even, we have it because of the experience, and we've been in that room many times. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to kind of push that down to someone that hasn't even stepped into that world, to let them know, here's a hint. When you're in this situation, do this. Like, it sounds like a risk, but if anything, it's an advantage.
I hear you.
And in moderation too, right? Because depending on lifestyle, Jason may look at me and go, so are you not fucking available this weekend? What about the kids? Where are you at? Are you closing the door again? Yep. I mean, so we got to figure that out.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case when I was living on my own in Seattle and didn't have a car and was like city transit everywhere and getting drunk every night and figuring out the next morning. Like, things change. So
responsibility and everything else.
I would love to further that discussion into, just because I'm married and Nick's not, doesn't mean that he has like lifestyle engagements and dedications personally in his life that he needs to balance all that shit with. So to become an expert in a weekend comes with some other detriments.
Oh, but what a great way to put it. I love that idea, because you're like, I'll answer that on Monday.
For sure.
Yeah. It's, I think
who hasn't done that? I'm with you.
But we have.
I took that Illustrator manual home when I told him I knew Illustrator and I didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but that's across the board in our space. If you want to make it our industry, so let's think about this, because we're roughly same years experience in the industry. It's changed 5, maybe 6 times in the past 2 decades, going from print going from offset to now digital print, and web. And then we had to deal with this, like the global economy. And then we had to deal with social. And like, it has changed so many times. AI now. But what's kept us going is because we still have this curiosity. We want to be foolish. We want to learn. We want to make mistakes. And we're constantly driving ourselves. And if a designer doesn't have that internal curiosity to learn more than just at surface level, to find out, our futures are done. Like, they might as well throw in. You might as well throw in, because you need that.
All right, I'm using that one.
We all need that.
I'm using that one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That's fabulous.
I love that. I love that. Well, guys, this has been freaking
amazing.
Oh my God,
loved right? I wish we had 2 hours. I warned you that we will talk. I warned you.
I feel so grateful that we got this time together today. Thank you.
We got to do it again.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do
I
it
would
again.
love that.
We can do once a year recap. We should do the once a year recap.
The once a year recap.
I'm in.
Or find a central location where we'll all be at, and we'll do a
live
version. Right? We'll do a live version, kind of like we did at Creative South Net.
Yeah, maybe crop or something could be a good one, because it's central to all of us, but like, we got to find a really good time. And that would be a blast, guys. All right.
Oh, and this was home to me because Jason is from Southern Alberta. He says about the same way that you do. There's a number of terms in there. Process. He says process the same way you do. The correct way. I love it.
Yeah.
Bloody Yanks.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell everybody where they can find you, because I'll have it in the show notes, but give them your props.
So you know what, you can obviously our podcast is on Spotify, and we're on Apple as The Angry Designer, and we're also our website, theangrydesigner.com, and even on YouTube if you want to see these mugs of ours. However, I think you guys looking much better. You got this whole LA thing, and like Mikal, look at her. She's like, come on.
We do it shirtless on YouTube.
No, that's us. Is that? I thought that was the OnlyFans, the naked designers.
The passionate designers.
Hey. There you go.
Don't be surprised, man. Never say never. You never know. Once AI kicks in, it might be where we all are.
We might get desperate.
Yeah, and I have Nick Youth to thank for syncing up with these guys and getting to know them.
It was so easy. It was so easy. Yeah.
Dude.
For all of us to enjoy.
We had the best time chatting.
If there's ever any way we can help, just please don't be scared. We're now friends. That's it. We're
wonderful.
There you go.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
The best.
Right,
you guys are wonderful.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
This is amazing. Thank you.